One of the most confusing moments in a sensitive person's life is the day someone looks at them and says, "You used to be so kind. What happened to you?" And the strange part is, they say it right after you stopped letting people drain you. You didn't become cruel. You didn't lose empathy. You simply stopped volunteering your nervous system as public property. But to the people who benefited from your endless availability, that change feels like betrayal. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if the moment people call you cold is actually the first moment you started becoming psychologically healthy? If you've always been the emotionally sensitive one, this pattern probably feels familiar. You notice tension in a room before anyone speaks. You instinctively calm arguments that were never yours to solve. You absorb stress from friends, partners, coworkers, sometimes even strangers. And for a long time, it feels like compassion. You listen longer than anyone else. You forgive faster than anyone else. You stay in conversations, relationships, and situations long after they've become exhausting. Not because you want to, but because leaving feels wrong. Psychology has a name for this pattern. It's not simply empathy. It's emotional hyper-attunement. Your brain learned early that the safest way to exist around other people was to monitor their emotional state constantly. Tone of voice, facial tension, mood shifts. Your nervous system became a radar. And when that radar detects discomfort in someone else, your instinct is immediate. Fix it. Smooth it over. Make them comfortable. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere in your past, someone else's emotions determined your safety. So you learned to manage them. But here's the quiet problem with living like this for years. The more you regulate other people's emotions, the less space you leave for your own. At first, it just looks like being supportive. Then it becomes a role. The listener, the helper, the emotional translator. Eventually, something more dangerous happens. It becomes your identity. You start believing your value comes from how well you absorb other people's chaos. And the moment you stop doing that, people feel the shift immediately. This is the part almost nobody warns sensitive people about. When you start healing, the first thing that disappears is your performance. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop over-justifying your exhaustion. You stop rescuing people from consequences they created. And suddenly, the people who once praised your kindness say something very different. You've changed. But here's the trap. You start wondering if they're right. Maybe you did become distant. Maybe protecting yourself is selfish. Maybe your empathy is disappearing. Except that's not what's happening at all. Something much more interesting is happening. Your empathy is finally developing a border. This is what Carl Jung described as individuation, the process where a person stops performing the role others expect and starts integrating the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. For sensitive people, those hidden parts are usually the same ones: anger, the ability to say no, the instinct to leave instead of fixing everything. For years, those traits stayed buried because they threatened your identity as the understanding one. But when they finally surface, you don't become colder, you become balanced. You still care deeply about people. You still notice emotional shifts others miss. But now something else exists alongside that sensitivity. Choice. You can care without carrying. You can listen without absorbing. You can help without sacrificing your stability. That is not detachment. That is emotional adulthood. And ironically, this is the moment some people feel most uncomfortable around you, because the version of you they knew was easier to access, easier to lean on, easier to take from. The quieter version of you, the one who no longer explains every boundary or chases every misunderstanding, feels unfamiliar. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped negotiating your worth. And if you've recently become quieter, more selective, less emotionally available to everyone, there's a good chance something important is happening. You might not be shutting down. You might be reorganizing your empathy. Because real empathy doesn't destroy the person who has it. It includes them. And once someone learns that, they stop trying to be endlessly understanding. They start trying to be whole. And strangely enough, that's usually where a completely different psychological challenge begins. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe for more content and future uploads. We deliver interesting psychologies and neuroscience facts in a compact format. Have a nice day. We will see you in the next episode.